Where have you been for the last year?
Same place as you, man, not recording this podcast.
Would the day ever come that we were going to record? I really wanted to do another season, but you had been so busy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd been busy too.
It's not like I didn't want to do it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you want to be here doing this. I really enjoy doing this, but it has been a very, very busy season of life.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on in the last year. And as much as I love doing this, and we love doing this together, but it does feel like, man, of all the most important things that have been going on in the last year, this has been hard to get to. And we got a little break in the action, and here we are. And what a fitting conversation to talk about today is how to preach through a busy season.
Season 5, Preaching Through Podcast, Episode 1, Preaching Through Busyness of Ministry. It's finally back. We could have told people that, hey, we're taking a break, but it's like on social media when anyone says we're taking breaks, like, I don't care. Like,
good for you.
Good for you.
A good riddance is usually what I think. Oh, good. I didn't really care about your dumb posts anyway.
What's even funnier is if you don't see the I'm taking a break and all you see is, hey guys, I'm back. And you're like, had no idea you went anywhere.
That might be how some listeners are experiencing this moment right here. Like, right now. I didn't even know you were gone.
Some people knew that we were gone though, and I was grateful because this season is it's a bunch of questions that people had sent in over the last month. I think there were maybe like 6 or 7 people that were like, hey, when are you doing the next one? Here's the episode that you should do. So that'll be filled with some of them. But this was one that I added because of the mere fact that we have not recorded. When this comes out, I think it will have been just a year exactly since we released the last episode with me and you. Of course, we did one with Seth, Preaching Through Gender and Sexuality. You did one with Taylor on Preaching Through a Manuscript. But it's been, I think, a year to date when this one comes out that we've recorded a live episode with me and you.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, good to be back. So for those of you who are listening for the very first time, my name's Dave and this is Luke. And the Preaching Through podcast is all about preaching the significance of Jesus in 21st century America. The message doesn't change, but the way we need to convey that message, communicate that message, there's all sorts of different shifting context. You may move from one church to another. Context, all of a sudden you get an influx of people like here in Arizona. The context is fairly certain for probably 5 to 7 years, but then a new influx of people come in. And so that context shifts. So how do you communicate the significance of Jesus in that? So since we recorded the last one, we've done, just for Faithful and Fruitful, we'll get into what you've been doing with Ironwood, but just for Faithful and Fruitful, we've done 2 preaching days, or two preaching days, 2 preaching labs. We've done about 10 training days, and we've done 4 lead pastor leadership intensives, which I actually was going to say we've done 3, but no, it was like November 4th. It was the last one. And then we did the first leadership intensive after that. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but just give us an update on what that was like for you.
Yeah. I mean, like you're saying, it's not like we haven't been doing stuff with Faithful and Fruitful. And people sometimes ask me like, what is faith? Like, is it your thing? Is it like a side thing? Like, how does this work? And how do you do it? And it's not my main thing. My main calling and my main job and vocation is lead pastor of Ironwood Church. But this is a fun thing that we get to do on the side that helps people. I think it's helping our church. I think it's helping my leadership. There's a lot of overlap in terms of it feels like time well spent. But there's always more in some of this side stuff, helping other churches and working with other pastors, that more opportunity than I have time to give it. That said, all the stuff you just mentioned have been a blast. It's not like we haven't been doing something. The preaching labs are incredible. The lead pastor intensives, I just think I looked for over a decade to try to find places where people would do the kind of thing that those are, and it just doesn't exist, right? You go to a conference, you go to a lot of seminars and workshops, and it's a lot of someone talking, and you have to try to figure out, okay, does any of this connect with my real world? What I love about the lead pastor intensives is everyone that comes to that, and it's usually limited to like a dozen lead pastors, they come with their questions. They come with their issues. They come with the stuff they're working on for the next few months and walk away with a lot of really practical help. So that's a blast. And then, you mentioned the training days. Those are incredible. And the training days actually somewhat contributed to me getting busier in the last year. And I know we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah. So those are things that we've been doing with Faithful and Fruitful. At Ironwood right now, we are, to a lot of the people in the church, it seems like we are just starting a capital campaign, but the truth is, part of the reason why we've been absent is because this capital campaign has been something that has been, you've been working through, you've been working on since, the spring. And so that really opens up into, it has been a very busy season of ministry, and not just because of this capital campaign, but because you're still preaching. You've still got responsibilities to lead the staff. You still have responsibilities to provide vision for the church week to week. It's not like any of that takes a back seat, and now you're doing this capital campaign. So it is a uniquely busy season of ministry, but there's always busyness in ministry, and Sunday comes with great regularity.
Well, and to kind of lift the curtain a little bit, lift the hood, let people in. I mean, about a year ago, as a church, we had just gone through a significant transition. Longtime listeners of the show will know that for a long time, we were part of a multi-congregational church. And at the beginning of 2023, we all particularized. The 10 congregations became 10 distinct churches. So about the time we wrapped up our last season, we were about a year into that transition. And so just kind of the dust settling on like getting just our organization established as our own entity. Like that was just a lot of work. And so I was kind of feeling like, okay, we're reaching the end of that, but what's next for us? Like the transition to become our own thing, like that matters, but like, where are we going? And I was feeling a bit stuck actually about like, what is the Lord inviting us into? Like, I know it's something, but what is it? And so it was in the spring that really became clearer to me. And so when your short-term vision gets clear, all of a sudden there's a lot to do, right? When you're a little bit treading water of like, well, I don't know exactly where we're going. And treading water maybe is too negative. I really feel like it was a season of waiting on the Lord. And when you're waiting on the Lord, you feel like you're doing nothing, but you're not. You're waiting on him. But it's not as busy because you're kind of waiting for like, okay, Lord, where do we go? Well, once you start to go, then there's a lot to do. And so in our case, that part of that is the capital campaign, the resource initiative. But even more than that, we had set beginning in July this goal as a staff that over the next year we were going to have 1,000 one-on-one meetings, lunches, dinners, breakfasts, meetings in the office with 1,000 different people from our church. So like that started taking some energy. That was a big initiative. And then we really cast vision for just what the theme of our year would be. And I know we'll do an episode on preaching through an annual theme. But yeah, there's just as my vision clarified, as our team's vision clarified, it was like, oh wow, we got a lot to do. Let's get moving. We've also seen just significant growth. So in our church, we've been averaging this fall about 500 more people per Sunday than this time last year, and so that's just significant. Some weeks it's been as many as like 700, 800 more people that weekend than the same weekend the year before. So there's a lot of ministry going on. And that's where a lot of different people are that are listening to this is maybe it's from a season of growth. Maybe it's just from other stuff that's going on. Ministry is whack-a-mole. There's always something popping up and there's always something for you to hit. And so, yeah, you can get busy in a hurry for lots of different reasons.
There was a stretch where, so we do this podcast together. I attend Ironwood Church. We're in the same small group, but like, we're also buddies and we like get together. Well, there was a stretch there where I think it was like 6 nights out of the week, you were busy doing stuff. We traveled to Denver in June for the intensive and we traveled together, but then September came around and you're like, I have a meeting that night that you want to travel. So I'll come the next day. So like you even had to like shift your travel plans for the intensive because you were so busy. And I think a little bit has like loosened up on that.
Yeah,
so now, but
and we'll do hopefully an episode at some point about preaching and leading through a resource initiative. When you're looking to build something or raise money. But yeah, beginning of August, I think I had 11 different lunches and dinners with about 15 to 20 people from our church, and most of those were dinners. And then we had at the end of August, beginning of September, 6 different vision meetings with each one, 120 to 170 people. Those were all in the evening, right? And so at the beginning of all of that, I sat down with my family and we talked it through and went like, hey, this is going to be an unusually intense season. I typically do not do ministry stuff in the evenings for the most part. It's a pretty rare thing. And so to have months of, okay, and there were times where, my 9-year-old son's like, are you going out again?
Yeah.
And thankfully, we had talked about that. My wife was super supportive, and everybody knew that. Well, and I tried to actually include the kids in some of it, so they got to feel like part of it. But yeah, it was an intense time, and it was a time that needed to be that, right? Like there's sometimes when you're busy because you've been sloppy and you've let life get out of control, right? And that's frustrating when you end up in that part where you're like, oh my gosh, I am reaping the fruit of a bunch of bad decisions I made 2 months ago to schedule a bunch of things. This was different. This is a key time. We're trying to raise a lot of money to do something really important. This really matters for the future of our church. But it's busy.
So that's a little catch up of where we've been, what we've been doing. This podcast is specifically about preaching. So this episode is preaching through the busyness of ministry. And one thing that I really like about what we produce at Faithful and Fruitful is it's not like hacks, tips, and tricks, but it's more like lifestyle changes. It's
Are we lifestyle influencers, Dave? Is that what that means?
Okay, let's re-record this. No, I mean, maybe we are, but it's like it really is like it's a way of life of doing things. It's not like here's a shortcut that's going to help you.
Yeah, I want people to be the kind of person that is faithful and fruitful, not just do the kind of stuff that faithful and fruitful pastors do.
So one of the things that really was a conduit to making the change, you had told me, you said, I knew that you had kind of been feeling a little bit of this, that waiting on God. Like, what's he doing? Mm-hmm. You do feel like you're doing nothing when you're just waiting on the Lord. And you had shared with me that the short-term vision training day that we did was actually pretty helpful. And so it wasn't about like, oh, here's just a little hack that we're going to do, but let's use that. Let's transition into what kind of set off this season, because you had to preach for a large majority of, this season that we've been in.
Yeah. Well, and so that training day was really helpful. And if anyone is thinking through how do I communicate and think through a short-term vision, I would just highly recommend it. It'd be a good investment of an hour to go through that. And it was that way for me. I think I had been at a point where, because we had gone through such a big transition, I was thinking about, well, whatever the next thing we do has to be more longer term. And actually that training day, teaching through it and reminding myself of stuff that I've done before.
Yeah.
And as well as through the research process, seeing some stuff some other churches have done, it freed me up a bit to go, you know what? I don't really need, like, the church isn't needing me to come up with like, here's our next 5 years. But if we could just have a rallying cry for the next 6 months, the next 9, 12 months, like that would actually really help us. And actually, as we do that, we might get a little bit unstuck. And so that's what started to, get that process going. And it's made this last year really, really fun.
When you shared with me that the training day was helpful, I love that. When we started this thing, I said, one of the visions I have is that a lot of the stuff that we do could really directly benefit our church and could really directly benefit younger leaders. And you say, hey, go watch this training day, and then we're going to talk about it. So to hear that it actually helped you going through it was like very encouraging to me, because I we're not doing this just to spin our wheels. Like, I really, really want it to have an impact in the kingdom. And I really want like leaders to feel like, my goodness, I was unleashed to do something that God designed me to do. And it was just this one little insight from a training day that helped unlock that.
And dude, honestly, the other stuff that we do, and I know we're not just trying to like promote all the stuff we do, though I think more people should know about it because it's really helpful.
Yeah.
But all the stuff we do has helped make me better. Like when we started doing all of this preaching stuff, I remember I told you, like, I don't think I'm that good at illustrations. I actually think I'm good at illustrations now. And a big part of that is a couple times a year for the last number of years, I've taken a cohort of guys through the preaching lab, and we talk a lot about illustrations. And like, I've gotten better at it because I've focused on that. I think about the lead pastor intensives, and it's like these lead pastor intensives make me better, because so much of the time, the questions that everybody has relate to like the blocking and tackling, nuts and bolts. This is just what it is to manage your life and manage your energy and manage your leadership. And I go, oh yeah, like, duh. Like, dude, follow the advice that you're giving to some of these other pastors. And so we're just all dealing with the same stuff. I mean, it's at different scale and it's in different contexts, and it's not, one-to-one identical in every place. But man, there's so much overlap in terms of the questions people come at a lead pastor intensive, the things I'm wrestling through. And so I feel like I'm getting better through all of those things. Talking about this stuff makes me better. So this is for sure a good use of my time, just for the sake of what it does for my leadership and for Ironwood Church. But I think that's also why just being intentional about your leadership is such a worthwhile investment.
What gets in the way of sermon prep? One person said this: I'm the only pastor and the only staff member, so much more falls on me than it should. Other things like editing and uploading our worship service, podcasting, social media posts, photography, videography, home repairs, rides for our church members in need, playground maintenance, light bulb changing, toilet plunging, and on and on.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. The next person said hospital visits and the beautiful and otherwise interruptions. Our folks know my simple principle of people first and that my door is almost always open. And I love getting to randomly connect with my people, but it is hard to keep the continuous train of thought across multiple interruptions. It's part of being the only pastor at a growing church that has almost doubled this year, but it can make life difficult. And then one more guy said internal. It's procrastination. These are just three of the things that guys have said get in the way of their sermon prep. It's just busyness of ministry. And that last one, internal procrastination, it's not like ministry is less busy and then it's like, oh no, I have plenty of time. I'm just a procrastinator. It's like, no, ministry's still busy and you've got procrastination.
Well, and sometimes when it's so busy all the time, when you actually have a free minute, your mind and your heart are still just racing and you don't even know what to do with yourself. And so it's like, and you feel stuck because it's like, okay, a window opened up, but I'm not in a headspace and a heart space to actually work on this. And so it's just easier to like check Facebook.
Or take a nap.
Yeah.
I love the are you a midday nap guy?
Only when really, really necessary.
Yeah. I've become a midday.
I don't work from home like you do.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a little harder.
I used to work out of my parents' house. We had one episode where I was at my parents' house. So you're like, Dave, successful entrepreneur living with his parents. No, now I work out of my own house. But yeah, sometimes it's just so busy that's like, I just need to go take a nap. So I think one of the things that we should establish is that there are different types of busyness. And so
and even to those responses, I mean, I don't know how much we want to analyze all those responses, but let's take procrastination off it. But the first two, like there's so much of what those guys shared that I go like, that is so awesome. Like I love it. I love the heart. I love the open door. I love I'm here to serve. I'm willing to plunge toilets. Like I love that. I also want to push back on it a little bit and go, there might be some expectation setting, like where people go, like I go, should the lead pastor be changing all the light bulbs and plunging all the toilets? I mean, maybe if it's an emergency right now and he's there and it has to happen, or could there be some deacons? Could there be some volunteers? Could there be some other things built? So I do think there's a tension there between having a heart of a servant and also saying, okay, but I've got to be an equipper of people so that I'm not the only person. If my church has doubled, maybe my door is always open policy is actually going to be a problem to me effectively ministering to now twice as many people. So I love the heart and I want to go, you might be setting yourself up for some failure down the road.
One of the things I've heard you say though, as our church has changed sizes, whatever sizes those might be, folks typically love the size of the church when they arrived. That's kind of their baseline expectation. And you'll wind up hearing laments of, well, I loved it when and I really appreciated when and one of the refrains I've heard you say is like, I miss those times too.
Sure.
Like I miss being the one who always got to connect with people on the hospital calls.
Yeah. It's way more fun when someone reaches out and goes, hey, I have something that, I wonder if you could meet with me and talk through. And it's way more fun to go, sure, how about lunch tomorrow? Than to go, well, in 3.5 weeks, I've got a hour gap in the afternoon. Could you, like, that's just it's less fun. It's it feels less personal. It is less personal. And so, there's a lot to grieve along the way. And yet if I dropped everything to have lunch tomorrow with everyone who asked, I would not be able to effectively lead at the level that God's calling me to lead. So, there's a tension to manage there.
Side note, one of the things that you did during that, I think it was like actually, I don't remember the months, but it was kind of during that waiting on the Lord time. You did something called, was it like a reunion tour? Is that what you called it?
I called it my Reignite tour.
Reignite tour. Talk to us about that, because you were like, you had not been having all of those luncheons and all of those meetings, and it kind of led to, share.
Yeah, over the previous few years in the larger multi-congregational organization that we'd been in, I was doing a lot with that and with other congregations. And so was just not spending as much time with the people of our local congregation. And so as my time was freed up to be able to focus specifically and exclusively on our church, I just thought, what would probably help reignite my vision would be to be around some of the amazing people of our church. So I just made a list of who are some great people in our church that I haven't had coffee or lunch with in a long time. And I just started, I didn't tell them, hey, I'm doing a Reignite tour. It was like kind of between me and Molly and a couple of my good friends like you, who knew that that's what I was calling it. But that was the whole thing of like, Lord, would you reignite my affection for these people? Would you reignite my vision for our church by allowing me to, get around these folks? So yeah, that was a great time. Now that's a really different situation than the guy who's going, I have all these drop-ins all the time, these beautiful interruptions, someone that's already, overloaded with that is in a very different situation than what I was doing.
So there are different types of busyness. Mm-hmm. There is, for lack of a better term, there's like, it's a purposeful manufactured busyness. Hey, we're doing this thing, so we're going to make ourselves busy. There's maybe busyness of lack of development, lack of leaders, that type of busyness. What are the types of busyness that you see that wind up being a part of ministry and impacting preaching?
Yeah, so I just want to say on the front end, I don't think busyness is bad. Like the way Molly and I have talked about it, and we both like to get stuff done. We are get it done people. And the way we've described it is like, we want to have busy lives. We don't want to have busy hearts. Now, that's easier said than done, because you get a real busy life, your heart tends to get pretty busy. But there's not a problem necessarily with busyness. And there might be all kinds of busy seasons you have to lead and preach through that are busy because of things that are out of your control. So it's like one of the things I think about is like, you might be in a busy season because of stuff going on with family, right? Like I know a lot of guys who it's like, as they hit middle age, their parents start to have more health issues. There's stuff outside of anyone's control where it's like, oh, I now have to spend the next 6 months trying to help my parents find a different living situation, or trying to figure out how to, change power of attorney or different stuff like that. My dad has had a couple different bouts over the last number of years with cancer, and it's like that changes the dynamic just with family. So there's like your extended family. There's also your immediate family. As your kids age and your kids get older, for people that have a lot of kids, there's just a lot that you have to start to manage. I mean, just for, I've got 4 kids, 1 in college right now, 3 at home, and the 3 at home are only each doing one thing. But that
times
one
3.
thing, that's 3 things. Yeah. So it's not like each kid is doing multiple sports, but like each kid doing a thing is like, it adds up to the point where you go like, man, this is kind of a lot. So there's family reasons you might be busy. There's ministry reasons like we talked about, where it's like, hey, I'm choosing to be busy because there's important stuff I'm leading into. And then there's kind of like the, oh crud, how did I end up so busy? I said yes to everything. And when I made those plans, I didn't have any thought to how I was going to feel now about it. And so, oh crud, I'm doing too much now. And so those are different kinds of busyness. They all kind of leave you in the same place of, there's like, okay, how do I preach in those moments? How do I have the leadership and the heart and the passion when my schedule, for whatever reasons, whether I chose it and it's my fault, or whether it's just happening to me and it is what it is, whatever the case, it still requires some intentional leadership.
The areas that we're going to walk through here are managing your emotional energy, managing your priorities, managing managing the process, managing processing, like who are you going to bring into the circle to process with, and then managing people's expectation on your time. So let's start with emotional energy, managing your emotional energy. How do you think about that?
This to me is almost the most important thing as we talk about this. It's like what makes ministry so hard is not the specific tasks, it's the emotional energy connected to it, right? Like people who, like there's a guy on our elder team who, travels all over the place to give a presentation. He's like the heavy hitter that his company brings in to, speak at all these conferences and stuff like that. Well, there's physical exertion to traveling, there's physical exertion to speaking, but he's not pouring his heart out, right? He's not opening himself up. And he's not having to create a new talk every week. He's got like 3 or 4 talks and he picks one of them and they do it and he just does it over and over and over. And so it's like, it's physically exerting, but preaching is emotionally exerting, right? I mean, everyone listening who's a preacher understands what people who are not preachers do not understand, which is like the emotional pressure over time of having to keep delivering good preaching. It's like really significant. Like, I mean, one of the ways I heard it explained was, to average people is to go, if you graduated from high school or you went through college, at some point you had like a big term paper that was due. And the feeling of being 3 days away from that paper being due and going, oh no, I have so much more I still have to do on this. And how much work it was. And how like, oh crud. Well, preaching is you have that every week, only instead of turning this paper in, there's like people inviting their friends to hear you present it and not just read the paper, but like present it in an interesting, like it's a lot. And so I think that's where like the extra time, especially those extra pressures of people's expectations or difficult things in your family or challenges in the church, maybe some busy seasons happen because there's crisis in the church or there's conflict and you find yourself wading into these waters, or like, man, there's a lot of extra elder meetings because we got big decisions to make. I mean, all of that stuff just takes significant emotional energy. So as we think about preaching through a busy season, we have to try to identify, oh man, here are the ways that I am being depleted emotionally. And I need to try to carve out some space and some time to replenish that. And in a busy season, that isn't going to look like big, huge chunks of time. But it might just be to go, you know what? When all I want to do is just sit on the couch and like scroll social media to kind of numb myself because I'm overwhelmed, what I actually need to do is sit on the porch, leave my phone inside, and just sit out there and take a bunch of deep breaths and drink coffee. And if I just do that for 30 minutes, like I'm going to actually be in a much better emotional place than if I doom scroll for a while. So it's carving out the things that replenish you, so that in the midst of it, you are not only being depleted, but you're starting to refill that as well.
With me having depression and battling that early on, it was 2012 when I was diagnosed, and it was a really, really rough season. It took about 2.5 to 3 years to get good at understanding how do I manage this, right? Like the medication was one thing, but there's so much more to manage than just taking my pill every single day. And
Sure.
One of the things that I identified was a list of 3 things that really filled my cup. One of them was going to a baseball game. If I could just go sit at a baseball game, like I felt like I was being filled. It was so much fun. And walking around and getting a hot dog, even going by myself. I mean, it was great if I went with a friend, but I would go by myself because I know that my soul needed that.
Yep.
Another thing was going to the movie, just going to see a movie in the theater and being taken to another place with a great story. And now there are movies and there are films, but I was fine with either.
Yeah.
That's
a little jab at me.
That's a little jab at Luke. Yeah. So, but I loved going to see, like going to the cinema is what I called it. And I didn't have to get popcorn. I just needed to be taken to a great place for a great story. And then the other one was getting dinner with friends, like picking a time to go have a dinner with a friend was a way of me filling my tank. And another thing that was more of a long-term was having a vacation plan. I actually would say something to look forward to. So I knew these 3 little bullet things.
Yep.
And then one big thing to look forward to. And that really helped me manage my emotional energy. We'll talk about managing people's expectations on you because I think that's part of that. But those were things that I could completely control, and identifying them took time. Leaning into them and being disciplined took time, and having my wife be on board with, hey, I think this is what I really need. It wasn't a reaction, but it was like, I think this is like one of the ways I've been designed, and I think this is going to help me be at my best.
One of the great titles of a book on prayer is a book called Too Busy Not to Pray. And I think that's the whole idea of this, is like when you get especially busy, you're so busy, you can't not invest in the things that replenish you. That's prayer, that's exercise, that's sitting on the porch, that's figuring out the things that refuel you, walking around, getting a hot dog at the game, whatever it is, in those seasons. And that's where you feel selfish because you go like, well, I'm so busy. Do I have time to do this? And you can't always do it every day, but like, is there a spot in the week? Is there a spot every few days where you can do one of those intentional things to just help refuel your emotional energy so that you're not trying to preach from a really dry place?
Yeah. The next thing is the big rocks first. This is managing your priorities. And that big rocks comes from Stephen Covey, that illustration of you can only fit so much in, but it kind of manages like, what do you put in first?
Yeah. For those that aren't familiar with that, the idea is if you imagine like a big cylinder and you're trying to fit all kinds of stuff. Well, if you start by pouring in the sand and then you try to put the big rocks in, there's no room for it because all the little sand has taken up its space. You put the big rocks in first and then the smaller rocks and then the gravel and then the sand. And that's how you approach it. And so even as I think about the stuff you read earlier, I would look at the list of expectations that pastor you mentioned has of himself or that other people have. And I would really try to go, what is most important? Just because everything's urgent, just because everything's loud, just because everything's reminding you, doesn't mean it's all equally important. And so trying to figure out what is actually most important, what's the best investment of my time. For most leaders, really about 20% of what they do makes 80% of the impact. And so figuring out, well, what is that? And making sure that you don't skimp on that. So for a lot of us that would listen to this, it's preaching. I mean, there is a reality that for many people who come to a church, if you were to ask them, hey, why did you come back a second time? A bunch of them are going to say something about the preaching.
Yeah.
And it's just a significant deal. It's how we lead our people. It's how we shape our people. It's not the only thing, but it's a significant thing. It sets the course for the church. And so, man, if we are skimping on our sermon prep, if we're skimping on our time with the Lord, if we're skimping on our preparation, like all of that stuff, someone's going to pay the price. And either we're going to pay the price or they're going to pay the price when they have to hear it. And so figuring out those priorities and going, okay, I'm actually taking on a bunch of stuff that is not that important, that if I didn't do it, it wouldn't matter. Like no one would know. And I actually don't need to worry about that.
We did a training day on designing your ideal work week with the idea of here is one approach to building a schedule that allows you to put the big rocks in first and manage those. And there's some strategies in there for communicating with people. There's some strategies in there for managing your schedule. There's some strategy. One of the freedoms of ministry, it's very similar in my life, but like as an entrepreneur, but like you really don't have a whole lot of people telling you this is where you need to be at this time in this box. There's some of that, but a lot of it is like you make your own schedule. And if you don't have that under control, it will control you and you will be ruled by whatever people tell you is the most important, not necessarily what you've decided is the most important thing.
Well, one little mental game you can play to try to help figure this out is imagine that a doctor came to you and said, like, imagine you had a heart attack and the doctor said, hey, you have too much stress. You have too many things. Like you can only work 10 hours a week. If you work 10 hours and 1 minute, you'll drop dead. So you get 10 hours a week. How would you spend that 10 hours? What would you do? Would you spend all of it on one thing? Would you spend a little bit on 5 different things? Like, what would you do? And so the answer is going to be different for each leader. But if you went, okay, I want to try to still make as big of a difference as I can, but I only get 10 hours to do it. How would you allocate those hours? That's a great indication because whatever would fill up the majority of that time, you go, that's what's most important. And so if that would fill up the majority of that time, well, then you got to make sure that that doesn't fall through the cracks, especially in these busy seasons.
So what you might want to do, get yourself a personal retreat day, get away for a day, day and a half, go somewhere an hour, hour and a half away. If you've got a hotel that you really like or an Airbnb that you've stayed at in the past, someplace where you know you can relax and you can really be present, get away, give yourself a personal retreat day to just focus in on answering that question. If I had only 10 hours to work each week, what would I do? And that might be one of the best first places you could start in order to design a schedule that allow you to be an effective preacher in the busyness of ministry. So after your retreat day, you'll have some sense of what's important. And I do think that there's this pressure that you have to decide on your own what's important. You have to decide how to manage it. These expectations that, this is my job and I have to do it. But when you're establishing what those big rocks are, whether it's, one of them should be preaching if you are the lead pastor or you're the teaching pastor, how to process those decisions with other people, whether it's, hey, what do you think about this decision? Or I'm very confident about this, but how do you think I should go about it? What's that experience been like for you?
It's such an important conversation because it is different when you're especially the lead pastor. Like everyone else on the staff has some boss who says, here's how I want you to be using your time in this next season. No one really has that as a lead pastor. I mean, the elders could do it, but they tend not to. And so you do have to go, okay, what is most important for me? But it's really helpful to bounce that off of some trusted people. Like for me, that would be my wife, Molly. It would be a number of our elders, some of our key staff, where I would go, hey, in this next year, here's what I think I really need to be focused on. And to get their input. And that's going to do a couple things. First, it's going to give you insight that you don't have, right? We all have blind spots. We all have things we don't see. I mean, that's true in all sorts of stuff. I mean, this is why having good counselors in lots of areas is significant. We were talking earlier about me feeling somewhat stuck on vision and processing that even with my wife. She's at one point was like, I actually don't think you're as far away as you think. And so that was really helpful. As I've tried to at different points go, okay, what do my priorities need to be here? Bouncing that off of some of our key leaders where they go, well, you're emphasizing this, and I actually think you could give yourself permission to not care that much about that. Really, you should focus on that. And so that stuff's helpful. Like they're going to provide helpful insights. So that's one reason. The second reason is all those other people are going to have to kind of buy in on how you're using your time, right? If you go, okay, I can't get to everything, something's going to drop here. I'm essentially what you're doing is you're pre-deciding which balls you're going to drop. And so if those balls are dropping and people don't know that here's why they're dropping is because I'm making sure I hold on to these ones, well, then they start to go, well, what's going on? Is he lazy? Is he unreliable? Whereas if they've been part of that conversation for their sake and for other people that are around them, they're like, oh, wait, this ball, he didn't used to drop that ball. And now he's dropping that ball. What's going on? They can go, oh, well, here's why. Because he's really focused on this. He's really spending his time on that. And so both the insight and the ownership that comes out of processing that with other people is really significant.
You were making lots of decisions on how you were going to manage your time. And like we mentioned up front, Faithful and Fruitful is a side thing. I spend a lot of time on it. You spend a lot of time on it. But there was a stretch where I knew what was going on in your life. And so I was understanding of like, hey, what do you think about this? And then you would come back and say, maybe in a couple months. And if I hadn't known what was going on, it'd be like, well, what the heck, man? I thought we were in this thing together. But knowing that like, oh, we're going to do the podcast after we get done with this stretch where he's out 6 nights out of the week.
Yeah.
Because right now that's just what's like, it allowed me to buy into it in a very practical way.
Sure.
You weren't coming to me saying, how do I manage this? You just said, this is what's happening. And it's like, okay, great. Now I know.
Yeah.
And it just alleviates a lot of potential for confusion. And I think it's kind. It's very kind.
That's great.
But you talked about there are going to be balls that dropped. And a lot of those balls are the expectations that other people have on you. They have an expectation that you will be the one who picks up the phone when they call. They have the expectation that you will be the one who shows up at the hospital. They have the expectation that you're going to be the one who preaches every single week. There's these expectations that people have on you and your time. And I don't think the question is, will I let them down? The question is, how am I going to manage letting people down? Because you cannot make everybody happy if you're going to prioritize your preaching, your sermon prep, because it is the most significant tool for leading a local congregation.
Yeah, you're going to inevitably let people down. I mean, I think one person described leadership as disappointing people at a rate they can handle. And I think there's something to that. I mean, leaders go, yeah, that is sort of how it works. We're not trying to disappoint people, but it's part of the deal. And so as we evaluate our priorities, it's really significant to go, what's most important right now? And one of the things that I think a lot of leaders do is they make the mistake of counting opinions when what we should be doing is weighing opinions. Everybody has an opinion, and to a degree, every opinion counts, but some opinions weigh more than others, right? So when the people closest to me who know me the best and see my biggest strengths and my biggest weaknesses, when they give me an opinion on something, that counts more than the person who doesn't really know. They just hear me preach on Sunday or something like that. So the expectations people have, well, some people's expectations weigh more and some people don't. And that feels harsh and that feels cruel. It's what it has to be as the church is growing and as the church is developing. Where it's really hard and where we have to grieve a lot is when there are people who, like you said, they came in and the church was a certain size, or the church operated a certain way, or they had a certain level of access, and now that has to change. And they really do matter to us. We really do love them. We really do enjoy them. But we have to not continue to relate to them in the exact same way we used to. That's painful, and that's hard. That's hard for them. That's hard for us. But we have to be able to say, here's what's most important right now. So one of the things that you could certainly prioritize coming out of a conversation like this is having a clear job description as a lead pastor. Here's what I have to do. Here's how I'm going to be evaluated. Here is how I'm going to try to assess things. And then here's the other stuff. I'm going to try to get to it when I can. But when I can't get to it, I can't get to it. And probably what you need to do is not just I think so many pastors, like in the long run, if you focus mostly on your preaching and on developing leaders, you would be way better off than just focusing on preaching, but then trying to do everything else yourself.
The reality also exists, because I've lived this reality, that pastors don't hurt people. My pastor won't hurt me. You could have
pastors don't hurt people.
I think that's the expectation.
Oh! I was going to say, I know a lot of people, including some at this table, who would say, "I was hurt by my pastor."
Is that pastors don't hurt people? Pastors can't hurt people. I think it's just unspoken. It's like, I have a good relationship with my pastor. My pastor won't let me down. Like my pastor's solid. My pastor is constant. Almost like my pastor is inhuman, right? Like my pastor knows what to say. My pastor will always be there. And when that unspoken expectation gets unmet, all of a sudden, I think that's where I've evaluated a lot of that. I think that's where a lot of the quote unquote church hurt comes from, is not from pastors going around intentionally hurting people, but I think it's a inability to manage the expectation that you're not human, that you aren't going to hurt people, that you aren't going to let people down. I think it often happens for leaders, pastors too, that I will meet everybody's expectations. I will show up everywhere that I'm supposed to be. I will do everything that everybody wants me to do. And then when you can't do that, because that's trying to be the Lord, when you can't do that, you hurt people because they thought that you were going to be that person for them, when really you should have been pointing them to who the Lord is the entire time and connecting them in a community where they could be the hands and feet of Jesus, because you're not going to be able to do that for everybody.
One of the best books anyone could read thinking through these issues is by Zach Eswine. It's called The Imperfect Pastor. Mm-hmm. And he makes the point early in the book, it's exactly what you're talking about, that it's like the temptations for pastors are, I need to be everywhere. I need to know everything. I need to be able to do everything. If you go, okay, well, what are the theological words for that? Be everywhere is omnipresence. Know everything, well, that's omniscience. Do everything, that's omnipotence. Those are characteristics of God. And when you look at theologically, there's the communicable attributes of God, which we share with God, love, joy, those sorts of things. And then there's the incommunicable ones, which is like, this is him and only him. Well, these are in the incommunicable category. And so the problem is not that we're not omniscient, that we're not omnipresent, that we're not omnipotent. It's that we try to be, right? It's trying to be God. And so this is what's interesting. Like, I think there is a perception that, like, as a large church pastor, well, that's all about him. And I think you could actually argue that it's sometimes a bigger temptation in the smaller church for it to kind of be all about him. He's got to do everything. And he feels like, well, they're paying me to do this. And I would look at it and go, no. Biblically, they are paying you to equip the saints for the work of ministry. They're not paying you to do all the ministry. And so that's why you've got to figure out, okay, what are my biblical expectations? Get ownership about that with your team, with your board, so that you can get buy-in on, all right, here's how we have to all do this work of ministry together. And here's how I'm going to focus my energy on these few things so that it will make the biggest difference for the most people in the long run.
To close out the conversations, are there any practical ways you've discovered to let people down graciously, to let people down well, to help others manage their expectations of you rather than one, being abrasive, or two, being completely absent?
Yeah, I've fallen in love with this phrase. That's not going to work for me. That's not going to work for me. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to make it to that. That's not going to work for me. Or another phrase would be, I already have a commitment. Now, what happens is we feel the expectation I need to explain what the commitment is. This just happened with Molly and I the other day. A friend and his daughter is getting married, and we were invited to the wedding, and she needed to reply to the RSVP. And we already had a commitment, and Molly started to tell her, well, no, we can't come, and here's why. And I said, you don't need to tell her why. Just tell her we already have a commitment. Most people are not going to ask, well, what's the commitment? And I find this, especially as you think about it in the pastoral thing, where it's like, one of the things I really encourage pastors to do is like make appointments with yourself for your sermon time. And then when someone goes, Pastor, can we meet? You go, no, I already have a commitment. Well, they aren't going to go, well, what's your commitment? But even if they did, you could say, well, my commitment right now is to spend this time with the Lord. I have an appointment. I have a meeting scheduled. It's with God to prepare this message. Now, they're never going to ask, but we feel this like, well, I can't say, like, and you don't have to explain it. You don't have to go, no, I don't want to meet with you, because that's not true. Go, oh man, I would love to do that, but I'm sorry, I already have a commitment. How about this? Well, now the ball's in their court, and you're not the one saying no. If what you can do, they're unable to do, that's up to them. Sometimes you can say, I'm sorry, I have a commitment. I'm not going to be able to do that. If you're willing to wait, here's when I could help you with that. Or would you like me to help connect you with someone else who could help you now? And so, like one of the things that you just have to realize is like, do people want help or do they want you? And a lot of times people are saying they want help, but they really want you. And so helping them even figure that out. Well, if you need help, I can get you help now. It's just not going to come from me. But if you need me, well, here's when I'm available to help you. And I would like to do that. Then when it gets harder is there are times when you're going like, I'm never going to be the person to help you. And that's when you have to just sort of lovingly let someone down and go, hey, what you're asking for is this. I'm not the best person to help you with that. This person is the best person to help you with. And it would be a disservice to you for me to spend that time with you to do that, because you're not going to get the kind of stuff you actually need. So for you to get what you really need, you're going to need to go through this channel. And then if they're disappointed by that, they're disappointed by that. And you have to accept that that's the case.
The way that I think about it is I always try to figure out how to say yes amongst a no, right?
Yeah.
Wrap my no in a bigger yes. I'm unable to do that, but here's what I can do. Would any of these work for you?
Sure.
I can't be there, but if you could wait, I wrap my no into a bigger yes. And what I also like, and you've told me this too, a lot of times when you put the ball in the other person's court, that's kind of where it winds up staying. They don't come back.
Sure.
Because of whatever reason. And that's fine too. But it allows you to shift the onus of responsibility somewhere else, so it doesn't always feel like it has to be you. And I think all of the thing to underscore is like, you want to build up relational equity over time so that you can say no, so that you can tap into some of these things that we're talking about in a way that makes it feel like, oh, Dave wants to be with me, but he's communicating honestly with me right now, as opposed to you've been a jerk for a long time and now you're just being a jerk in a different way, in a more passive aggressive way, maybe it would come across. And that's not what we want either. Thank you so much for listening to, season 5, episode 1, Preaching Through podcast. We're shaking off a little bit of the rust, and we're really glad that you're along for the journey. I'm really hyped about the conversations we're going to have this year, predominantly because they come out of a lived experience. We've got some that are really tapping into some of the things that we've already discussed today, just the season of life where you're in, Luke, where Ironwood Church is in, where we are in individually, but also conversations that have come in from folks saying, hey, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And if you have an episode you think we should do, send a message to info@faithfulandfruitful.com. That comes directly to Luke and I, and we would love to hear what's going on in your ministry. And I'd also love to make sure that you know faithfulandfruitful.com is where you can find all of the resources that we're creating. Much of them have been content that we shared today. We mentioned some of them by name, but we would love nothing more than for you to be able to go and get a training day on the Christmas offering and then run that playbook and get your most successful Christmas offering of all time. That's really what we would love, but in all sorts of areas. Luke, thanks for
Yeah, man.
getting through that busy season so we could do this.
Yeah, I'm glad we're back. And it's such a fun time.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next episode.